we probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it. We could have kept that piece of land, and we didn't. So they have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember. And the fact is, no nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States.
If you think the Western alliance is stable, you haven't been paying attention. What's happening right now between the United States and Europe over a frozen island in the Arctic could reshape global power for the next century. Hit subscribe, because what unfolded in the last 48 hours is unprecedented in modern history. An American president just threatened to invade a NATO ally, and that ally is preparing to fight back. Let me be clear about what's happening. This isn't speculation. This isn't analysis. This is real. Denmark has deployed hundreds of combat troops to Greenland. 8 European nations have sent military forces, and the United States president refuses to rule out using force to seize the territory. We are watching the Atlantic alliance crack in real time. Here's what happened in Davos yesterday. Trump stood before the world's economic elite and made a stunning announcement. He claimed he reached a framework deal with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on Greenland. He canceled the tariffs. He said he won't use force. But here's what nobody's telling you. The deal doesn't exist. NATO itself confirmed it. 2 diplomatic sources told CBS News there is no agreement for U.S. control of Greenland. When asked directly if Denmark would give up sovereignty under this framework, Rutte dodged the question. He said the issue didn't come up. Translation: Trump announced a victory that never happened. Think about that. The President of the United States stood on a global stage and declared success in a negotiation that the other party says didn't occur. This isn't diplomacy. This is theater. Dangerous theater with nuclear-armed nations as the audience. Let's rewind to understand how we got here. For weeks, Trump has been obsessed with Greenland. He calls it essential for national security. He says only America can defend it from Russia and China. He claims it's actually part of North America, so it's American territory. None of this is true. Greenland is an autonomous territory of Denmark. It has been for centuries. The people of Greenland have made their position crystal clear. They are not for sale. Denmark's position is equally clear. Greenland is not for sale. But Trump doesn't accept no for an answer. On January 18th, he threatened 8 European countries with tariffs: Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland. 10% starting February 1st, 25% by June, until Denmark agrees to sell Greenland. Let that sink in. The president threatened America's closest allies with economic warfare to force them to give up sovereign territory. The European response was immediate. Mass protests erupted across Denmark and Greenland. Tens of thousands marched wearing hats that read, "Make America Go Away." The symbolism was deliberate. America, once seen as Europe's protector, is now seen as a threat. Denmark's response was military. They deployed over 200 additional combat troops to Greenland. These aren't ceremonial forces. These are elite soldiers trained in Arctic warfare, led by the chief of the Royal Danish Army himself, General Peter Boysen. And Denmark isn't alone. France sent troops, Germany sent troops, Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, Finland all sent military personnel. They're calling it Operation Arctic Endurance. The name tells you everything. They're preparing for the long haul. Here's what makes this terrifying. Denmark announced that if the United States invades Greenland, they will invoke NATO Article 5. For those unfamiliar, Article 5 is the Collective Defense Clause. An attack on one NATO member is an attack on all. Article 5 has been invoked exactly once in history, after September 11, 2001. Denmark answered that call. They sent tens of thousands of troops to Afghanistan and Iraq. They fought alongside American soldiers for 2 decades. They suffered the 3rd highest per capita casualty rate in the alliance. Now Denmark is saying they'll use Article 5 against America. Let that register. A NATO ally that bled for America in Afghanistan and Iraq is now preparing to declare war on America if Trump invades Greenland. The Danish defense minister said it explicitly. Denmark will respond with deadly force. This isn't a diplomatic spat. This is a crisis that could end NATO. Trump supporters claim this is about national security. They say Greenland is strategically vital. they point to Chinese and Russian interest in the Arctic. They argue America needs ownership to defend it properly. Here's what they're not telling you. America already has a massive military presence in Greenland. Pituffik Space Base, formerly Thule Air Base, is one of America's most important military installations. It's been there since 1951. It hosts early warning systems for ballistic missiles. It tracks satellites. It's crucial for North American defense. And it exists because of a treaty with Denmark, a treaty that Denmark has honored for 75 years, a treaty that gives America everything it actually needs in Greenland without owning the territory. So what's really happening here? Why is Trump willing to destroy the Atlantic Alliance over an island he can already use? Follow the money. Greenland sits on vast mineral deposits, rare earth elements crucial for technology and defense, oil and gas reserves that could be worth trillions as Arctic ice melts. Some of Trump's biggest donors have direct financial interests in Arctic resource extraction. This isn't about security, it's about wealth, and Trump is willing to threaten war with allies to secure it. The European Union understands this. They're preparing to activate what's called the anti-coercion instrument. It's nicknamed the trade bazooka. It would allow the EU to impose sweeping restrictions on American tech companies operating in Europe. We're talking about potential bans on Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, the companies that dominate the European market. A full-scale transatlantic trade war over Greenland. For international viewers, understand what's at stake. NATO has been the foundation of Western security since 1949. It prevented Soviet expansion during the Cold War. It stabilized Europe after World War II. It represents the most successful military alliance in human history. And Trump is threatening to destroy it over territorial conquest. Because make no mistake, that's what this is. Territorial conquest. An American president demanding that a sovereign nation surrender territory, using economic coercion, threatening military force. Refusing to rule out invasion. This is the language of empire, not alliance. Yesterday in Davos, Trump said something revealing. He claimed that when America booms, the world booms, that everyone follows America up and down. He positioned America as the benevolent engine of global prosperity. Then, in the same speech, he threatened to economically destroy 8 allied democracies and potentially invade one of them. The contradiction is stunning. You cannot claim to be the engine of global prosperity while threatening to crush your partners. You cannot claim to defend democracy while demanding territorial surrender from democratic allies. The rest of the world is watching. Authoritarian leaders are taking notes. If America can threaten to invade Denmark, a wealthy, democratic NATO ally, what signal does that send to weaker nations? China is watching how America treats its allies. Russia is watching. Every nation considering alignment with the West is reassessing, because if Denmark isn't safe in the alliance, who is? Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said something profound before Trump's speech. He warned that when smaller countries negotiate individually with a hegemon, they negotiate from weakness. They compete with each other to be most accommodating. That's not sovereignty, he said. It's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination. He called on nations to stop pretending the rules-based international order still functions. Call it what it is, he said, a system of great power rivalry where the most powerful pursue their interests through economic coercion. This is a Canadian Prime Minister, America's closest neighbor and ally, declaring that the rules-based order is dead, killed by American unilateralism. Think about the timing. We're barely 2 years into Trump's second term. He's already threatened to invade 3 territories, Greenland, Panama, and Canada. He's imposed or threatened tariffs on virtually every trading partner. He's questioned America's commitment to NATO multiple times. The pattern is clear. Trump doesn't see allies. He sees assets to be acquired or liabilities to be shed. Relationships don't matter. Treaties don't matter. Shared values don't matter. Only power matters. And here's the most dangerous part. It might work. Yesterday's announcement suggests European leaders are scrambling to find an off-ramp. They're talking about increased cooperation on Arctic security, about demonstrating commitment to defending Greenland from Russia and China, about giving Trump a face-saving way to back down. They're negotiating from weakness, exactly what Carney warned about. If Trump gets any kind of deal that looks like success, he'll have proven that threatening allies works, that military and economic coercion against democratic partners is an effective strategy, that NATO's collective defense is negotiable if you're powerful enough. The precedent would be catastrophic. Other leaders would learn the lesson. Xi Jinping would note that threatening Taiwan invasion works if you're willing to sustain pressure. Putin would see validation for his Ukraine invasion strategy. Authoritarian leaders everywhere would understand. Might makes right, and international law is just a suggestion. But here's the alternative scenario. What if Europe actually holds firm? What if Denmark refuses to negotiate under threat? What if the EU implements its anti-coercion measures and starts restricting American companies? We could see the end of the transatlantic alliance, a fracture between America and Europe that fundamentally reshapes global power. Europe might accelerate its strategic autonomy, build its own military capabilities independent of America, deepen ties with other democracies, Japan, South Korea, Australia, to hedge against American unreliability. In that scenario, America becomes more isolated, less influential, still powerful militarily, but diplomatically diminished, unable to build the coalitions necessary to counter China or manage global challenges. Both scenarios are terrible for democracy worldwide. Either America successfully coerces its allies and proves authoritarianism works, or the democratic alliance fractures and leaves everyone weaker. This is what happens when personal ambition and financial interest replace strategy and principle in foreign policy. The people of Greenland never asked for this. They're a population of 56,000, mostly Inuit, living on the world's largest island. 80% of the territory is covered in ice. They've achieved substantial self-governance from Denmark. They're building their own identity and future. Now they're being told by the world's most powerful military that their home is strategic territory that must be controlled. Their government asked citizens to prepare for possible American attack, to stockpile supplies, to ready themselves for war. Imagine being told to prepare for invasion by a country that claims to be your protector. The Greenlandic people are bewildered. Their business minister described Trump's threats as devastating. They see their homeland reduced to a resource prize in a geopolitical game. Their autonomy, their future, their self-determination, all bargaining chips in Trump's negotiation strategy. This is what imperial thinking looks like. People become problems to solve. Sovereignty becomes an obstacle to overcome. Democracy becomes inconvenient when it produces the wrong answer. Some Trump defenders argue this is just negotiating tactics, that he's not serious about invasion, that the threats are leverage to get better security arrangements. But threats have consequences even if not executed. Denmark has already spent billions on Arctic defense. Europe is already realigning military priorities. NATO is already questioning American reliability. These consequences are real and permanent, regardless of Trump's actual intentions. You cannot unring this bell. You cannot threaten to invade an ally and then expect trust to remain intact. The damage is done. And what happens next time there's a real crisis? When America needs European support for something genuinely vital to Western security, why would European leaders believe American commitments? Why would they risk their own security relying on a partner who threatened to invade one of them over mineral rights? Trust is the foundation of alliances. Trump is systematically destroying that trust. For what? A deal that gives America nothing it doesn't already have? Resources that could be accessed through partnership rather than conquest? The satisfaction of forcing smaller nations to submit? The cost-benefit analysis is insane. The potential gain is minimal. The potential cost is the entire Western alliance. Here's what we know for certain. The framework deal Trump announced doesn't give America ownership of Greenland. NATO confirmed that sovereignty wasn't discussed. Denmark hasn't agreed to sell anything. The people of Greenland haven't changed their position. What Trump got was face-saving language about Arctic security cooperation, things that were already happening, commitments that already existed. He repackaged existing arrangements as a new victory and claimed success. This is the same pattern we've seen before. Create a crisis, escalate dramatically, accept a minor concession or restatement of status quo, declare total victory, move on to the next crisis. It would be almost comedic if the stakes weren't so high. But when you're playing these games with military alliances and nuclear-armed nations, the margin for error is zero. One miscalculation, one misinterpreted signal, one leader who refuses to back down. And we could see military conflict between NATO members, something unthinkable just months ago. The real tragedy is that cooperation was always available. If Trump genuinely cared about Arctic security, he could have worked with Denmark and European allies to strengthen defenses, increased intelligence sharing, expanded military exercises, enhanced early warning systems, all things allies do together without threatening each other. Instead, he chose confrontation, threats, coercion, because cooperation requires treating partners as equals, and Trump doesn't do equals. For viewers outside the West, this crisis reveals something crucial about the current state of American power. The United States remains militarily dominant, economically powerful, technologically advanced. But it's diplomatically erratic, strategically incoherent, willing to sacrifice long-term alliances for short-term gains. That creates opportunities for other powers. China can position itself as a more reliable partner. Russia can exploit divisions in the West. Regional powers can hedge their bets, keeping options open with multiple great powers. The unipolar moment is over. We're entering a multipolar world. and America is accelerating that transition through its own actions. Make sure you're subscribed because this story is far from finished. The Greenland crisis will continue to develop. We'll see whether Europe actually holds firm or whether they find a way to give Trump his victory. We'll learn whether NATO can survive this stress test or whether the alliance fractures permanently. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand what's really happening, not the sanitized diplomatic language, not the face-saving frameworks. The actual crisis that's unfolding between America and its closest allies. Leave a comment with your perspective. Are European leaders right to deploy troops? Should Denmark negotiate under threat? Can NATO survive this? Your insights matter because this affects everyone. The question before us is simple but profound. Can democratic alliances survive when the most powerful member acts like an empire? Can collective security function when one nation threatens to invade another over resources? The answer will determine the shape of international relations for the rest of this century. And that answer is being written right now, in the frozen Arctic, where Danish troops stand ready to defend their territory against their supposed protector. History is being made. The question is whether we're watching the defense of democratic principles or the final collapse of the rules-based order. I'll see you in the next one.